Mr. Mayor, it is 7 p.m.
Great, thank you. All right, welcome everyone to this regular meeting this evening on Monday, November 1st. And I'm going to call this meeting to order. And will you first please join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Clerk, can you please call roll?
With pleasure, Mayor. Councilmember Goethals?
Here.
Councilmember Pappen? Here. Councilmember Lee is absent due to illness. Deputy Mayor Bonilla?
Here.
Mayor Rodriguez?
Here. Thank you. Due to the health orders in place currently, we are holding meetings remotely. Information on how to provide public comment is explained at the bottom of each published agenda. When public comment is announced for the item you wish to comment on, when signed into Zoom, use the raise your hand feature and you will be called upon at the appropriate time. If calling in via phone, please press *9 to raise your hand and then *6 to unmute yourself when called upon. These options for public comment will remain available until I close public comment for that specific item. Okay, this evening is going to be a little bit different in that we're going to be holding our fifth and final public hearing on the formation of district elections. And that is scheduled to start exactly at 7 p.m. So we may take agenda items a little bit out of order this evening just to make sure that anybody that's expecting that to start at that time, they're tuning in and we're starting on time.
Mr. Mayor, point of clarification, that is 7:30 p.m. For the
What did I say, a.m.?
You said 7 p.m.
7:30. Thank you very much. Yeah, that would have been 2 minutes ago. Okay, so we have 3 ceremonial items this evening. And first up is the United Peace Collaborative San Mateo. And I'm going to read a proclamation. And then I'm going to ask our Chief Barberini to say a few words. And then I'm going to invite San Mateo's own Maureen Tam to say a couple words. All right, so here we go. Whereas in the climate of hatred, racism, and violence against Asian Americans across the nation, a branch of United Peace Collaborative, UPC, San Francisco Chinatown was inspired to launch in San Mateo on July 17th, 2021 to help safeguard all valued senior community members after a senior Asian woman was robbed in Central Park on the same day as the Stop Asian Hate rally at San Mateo City Hall. And whereas UPC San Mateo is a volunteer walking patrol in Central Park and downtown area, taking an active role in deterring crimes of opportunity with their presence and aiding in contacting emergency responders for our most vulnerable community members. And whereas UPC San Mateo partners with the San Mateo Police Department to ensure a supportive safekeeping effort, as well as partners with nonprofit and community organizers to provide free personal safety kits to seniors throughout Central Park. And whereas UPC San Mateo Volunteer Walking Patrol is intended to support senior community members in their essential daily activities of socializing, exercising, banking, marketing, and shopping. And whereas UPC San Mateo empowers the community to help safeguard its seniors, and seniors are empowered to thrive in a supportive community. Therefore, I, Eric Rodriguez, Mayor of the City of San Mateo, do hereby proclaim November 1st, 2021 as United Peace Collaborative San Mateo Day. Signed, Eric Rodriguez, Mayor. Thank you. And I'm going to ask our Chief, Ed Barberini, to say a few words first.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening. I just wanted to point out that as a police department, we recognize that we cannot be successful on our own. And we're very fortunate here in San Mateo to have tremendous support from our community. This effort by UPC is just another example of that support. We've been following and we're familiar with the efforts of the UPC in San Francisco, and we're very excited and enthused to have them begin their work in San Mateo. They've done a great job of collaborating with us. We're on the same page. We communicate well, and I just wanted to thank them for what they do for us and for our community. I know that they will be successful. I know this will work out well, and I really want to thank them and wish them the best as they move forward with this effort. I think it's a commendable one. So thank you for the time to mention that.
Thank you, Chief Barberini. Okay, so now we get to introduce one of the co-leaders of UPC San Mateo, Marlene Tam. Great to see you, Marlene, or I saw you before. I'm not seeing you up on the screen now, but go ahead and show yourself at this time if you can.
Thank you very much, Mayor Rodriguez, City Council members, and the City of San Mateo, and Chief Barberini. I, Marlene Tam, and UPC San Mateo co-leader Cindy Hui are deeply honored to accept this significant recognition on behalf of UPC's dedicated volunteers, such as Lisa Diaz-Nash, Tom Leese, and our partner organization, National League of Young Men, who help safeguard our valued senior community members. UPC would not exist without the generous support of UPC founders Leanna Louie and Robert Lowe and the UPC board.
We greatly appreciate the outstanding support we receive from Chief Barberini and the San Mateo Police Department, as well as San Mateo County District Attorney Stephen Wagstaff. We believe with community involvement, a responsive police department, and a strong district attorney, San Mateo sends a firm message that we will take action in safeguarding our community. As District Attorney Wagstaff reminded us at our most recent training, citizens make a difference, and we have to stay vigilant. We're always looking for volunteers and encourage community members to join our Central Park and downtown walking patrol at upcsanmateo.org. Thank you so much for this honor.
Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Cindy and Marlene, for being here. It's great to see you both. I'm sorry I didn't introduce you earlier, Cindy. I didn't realize you were going to be speaking as well. But you both and your whole team are really making a difference within our community and taking action. And I know that there are so many members of our community that are so thankful for all the work that you're doing to help make them feel more included and safe in our community. So thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Mayor.
Okay, have a good rest of the evening. And we are going to move on to our second ceremonial item, Recreation Department LEAP Program Recognition. And I have a proclamation here. Let me just pull it up on my screen. Okay. Whereas in August of 2020, when it was clear that our kindergarten through fifth grade community would be unable to return to in-person school due to the COVID-19 pandemic, the Recreation Division of the San Mateo Parks and Recreation Department, in partnership with PAL, stepped in and started an emergency distance learning program, which they named LEAP. And whereas the Learning and Education Assistance Program at the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Community Center, which later expanded to include the Senior Center, was home to 100 children each day throughout the 2021 school year. And whereas this program provided support to many of San Mateo's most in-need children and families. In addition, LEAP not only provided safe and nurturing spaces for children to continue their educations, but also provided parents and guardians with peace of mind, knowing that the entire staff cared deeply about each participant's mental and physical well-being. Classroom, computer, and emotional support were all on display and unwavering. And whereas staff also took extraordinary measures to create safety protocols for check-in in class time and checkout. Social distancing, constant hand washing, sanitizing of equipment, and masking of staff and participants were accomplished each day. And whereas the staff members that created and executed this unprecedented program and deserve profound recognition are Jennifer Wilson, Recreation Supervisor, Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Center, Kelvin Coggins, Recreation Coordinator, Laura Allen, Senior Program Assistant, Javier Diaz, King Center Custodian, Alex Greer, Recreation Supervisor Powell, Tracy Brummett, Recreation Supervisor Beresford Center, Caroline Shevel, Recreation Supervisor Senior Center, Zach Radcliffe, Recreation Coordinator, Rachel Torda, Inclusion Coordinator, Amber Shong, Recreation Coordinator, Liliana Gray, Senior Program Assistant, and the many part-time staff members that gave so much to our participants. Therefore, I, Eric Rodriguez, Mayor of the City of San Mateo, do hereby express our deepest gratitude for all the astounding work provided by the Learning and Education Assistance Program. Signed, Eric Rodriguez, Mayor. All right, now we have Bob Palacio, Parks and Rec Community Service Manager and Community Service. Let me start this again. It was written a little differently. Bob Palacio, Parks and Rec Community Service Manager, and Sheila Kanzian, Parks and Rec Director.
So thank you, Mayor Rodriguez and members of the City Council. Before I turn it over to Bob, I just wanted to say a couple of words. First off, thank you for recognizing the extraordinary efforts that our staff did during the school year of 20 and 21. I think we started it off thinking it was only going to be a several-month effort when in fact it was an entire school year. And I think our staff is to be commended for the outstanding effort that they did. I have been involved in obviously many efforts in our department over the years, and this is one that I think I am probably so profoundly proud of, because it really did support so many of our vulnerable families in San Mateo. And lastly, I really want to thank the City Council for agreeing to financially underwrite the program so that we could keep the fees low enough to be able to serve all the families that we needed to. So thank you again for the City Council recognition. And with that, I will turn it over to Bob Palacio, our Community Services Manager.
Thank you, Sheila. Thank you, Mayor Rodriguez and City Council members. Again, Bob Palacio, Community Services Manager for Parks and Recreation Department. Echoing Sheila's words, I wanted to thank you for not only recognizing the LEAP program and staff members this evening, but also for that fiscal support, which not only allowed the program to succeed, but we also were able to extend our reach. And that was truly important. I do want to note, because I think it's important, that in 2020, our staff had just finished summer camps on a Friday. And the very next week, they began this terrific distance learning program. And that is no small feat. We were in uncharted territory, and staff did it with so much grace and perfect planning and execution. And I'm very proud of them. I also just wanted to state that during that time, no one entirely knew how COVID was being transmitted. We weren't entirely sure, and their courage, their attention to the details around safety, and then finally the care and love that they showed to the children and families of our San Mateo community is truly something to celebrate. And so we have many of the people that Mayor Rodriguez mentioned in our meeting tonight, and I just wanted to say thank you from the bottom of my heart to all of you for what you did, because this was not a one-time, one-day event. This was something that you did each and every day, and really did it with your heart and your love, and I can't be more grateful and proud of the work that you did. So thank you again, Mayor. Thank you again, council members, for all of your support. Thank you, Drew, for your support as well. So with that, thank you very much.
Thank you, Bob and Sheila. Bob, I'm really glad you brought up the unknowns that your team faced during this, because I think it was a very selfless effort, and it's a great example of putting others first. And I also think it's a great example. Last week, the Education Foundation was having their fundraiser gala, and I made a few comments, and it's a great example of us partnering with or when I say us, our city, partnering with our school district, putting our children first, which is a high priority for everybody in helping increase their safety. So that's a win all across the board. And again, on behalf of City Council, thank you so much for all of that work that you put in to make that happen. Thank you. All right, we're going to move on to the third ceremonial item. And this is Human Resource Director Casey Escharte, Retirement Commendatory Resolution. And I'm gonna read this. Okay, commending Catherine Casey Escharte. Resolved by the City Council of the City of San Mateo, California, that Casey Escharte began her service to San Mateo on November 19th, 2008, and served the city with distinction for over 13 years, culminating in a public service career of 29 plus years. And whereas Casey began her career journey with a Bachelor of Arts in Psychology from UCLA and further attained a master's degree in social work from the San Francisco State University, followed by attaining her Human Resources Management Certificate. And whereas she served the County of San Mateo for 16 years, starting as a Deputy Public Guardian / Conservator, level 3, in the County Health Department, Aging and Adult Services Department for 7 years, then became an Employee Relations Analyst in the Human Resources Department for 6 years, and finally as Employee Relations Manager for 3 years, whereas she honed her extensive skills and knowledge of labor relations, supervision, training, grievance management, vision, and innovative programming. And whereas first appointed to the city's as the city's Assistant Human Resources Director on November 19th, 2008, she quickly became a go-to resource and thought partner for management, influencing organizational change and strategizing growth while simultaneously being an approachable listener and advisor for employees up and down the organization. And whereas Casey earned the Director of Human Resources position on May 11th, 2015, and built a great team in her department with her leadership by fostering a sense of trust, empowerment, and deep belief in her team's abilities. She made an environment for staff that was safe to take calculated risks and implement innovative solutions that lead to real and lasting change. And whereas her legacy will live on in the city with initiatives she was instrumental in developing, notably the establishment of our high performance orientation workplace culture, creation of the Employee Development and Training Division, spearheading the leadership retreats, updating the city's personnel rules and regulations, and all of the city's HR policies, and her avid support for the diversity, equity, and inclusion effort, as well as being recognized by the county for hiring individuals with disabilities and by the California Assembly for excellence in promoting phase 2 careers. And whereas since March 2020, she demonstrated her caring for the organization again and again through her innovation and leadership throughout the pandemic. She found ways to keep employees connected remotely, managed job sharing across departments, provided guidance in the Emergency Operations Center, continued recruitments and performance management, continued training opportunities, all while staying current and interpreting ever-changing COVID-19 health orders, Cal OSHA regulations, and state of California guidance on ensuring a healthy workplace. And whereas her vantage point and influence from her seat as HR director means she has been instrumental in organizational and cultural change, which she led by modeling with a calm demeanor and her can-do attitude with roll up your sleeves and get it done work ethic. open door can tell her, open door policy where you could tell her anything in any manner, and always smiling, collaborative approach to problem solving with her down to earth, real conversation and adages such as too bad, so sad, and especially important for her role, an ability to hold us all accountable and ability to even deliver bad news with a soft touch. And whereas Casey begins her next adventure upon her retirement with her husband, John, by her side, and her two daughters, Amaya and Jessica, cheering her on as she explores genealogy, gardening, volunteering, and especially trips with their family. And now, therefore, this council does hereby certify upon Catherine Casey Acharte its highest commendation for the manner in which she has demonstrated leadership, professionalism, knowledge, innovation, caring, and heart for employees and the organization as Human Resources Director of the City San Mateo, signed by all 5 council members: Eric Rodriguez, Deputy Mayor Rick Bonilla, Councilmember Joe Goethals, Councilmember Amarantz Lee, and Councilmember Diane Pappin. It's quite a distinguished tenure with our city. I'm going to now ask Casey if she would like to say a few words.
Wow, I'm very humbled. Thank you, Mayor Rodriguez and council members, my family, my Human Resources Department family, my executive team colleagues, and all my fellow city employees. It's been really an honor to serve the city of San Mateo, where I got a chance to grow up. And San Mateo is a wonderful place to live, work, and play. And the LEAP program that you heard about a few moments ago is one example of how spectacular San Mateo is. It's going to be in my heart forever. And I know you're going to be in great hands with the new HR director, Teresa Abramson. Thank you.
Thank you, Casey. You know, like culture, organizational culture really starts at the top. And I think that part of what makes San Mateo is just such a great place to work is from all the example that you set and the policies that you enacted. And that's going to be one of your many lasting legacies that we're still going to be experiencing while you're on your much deserved retirement. Thank you so much for your service to the city, and we all wish you the best.
Thank you.
Okay, wonder what we should do here. Should we try to knock off another agenda item, or should we hold for about 7 minutes and for our public hearing to begin?
Mr. Mayor, I think I could probably get through the consent calendar reading.
Okay, that sounds good. So, Madam Clerk, can you please read the consent calendar?
With pleasure. All matters listed under the consent calendar are considered by the council to be routine and will be enacted by one motion without discussion. If discussion is desired, that item may be removed and considered separately. Item number 4, City Council meeting minutes approval. Item number 5, remote teleconference City Council and Commission meetings reauthorization. Item number 6, San Mateo County Civil Grand Jury Report, San Mateo County, California Ground Zero for sea level rise. Item number 7, Art in Public Places 2021 Report and Plan Approval. Item number 8, US 101 Peninsula Avenue Interchange Improvements Project, Measure A Highway Program Funding. Item number 9, National Pollutant Discharge Elimination System Permit Renewal Agreement. Item number 10, Wastewater Treatment Plant On-Call Engineering Services Amendments. Item number 11, Peninsula Traffic Congestion Relief Alliance Joint Powers Agreement Amendment. And item number 12, Poplar Creek Golf Course Pro Shop Concessionaire Agreement.
Okay, thank you. Is there any member of the City Council that would like to pull an item off the consent calendar? Okay, seeing none. Is there anybody in the public who would like to speak on, from the public, that would like to speak on any item on the consent calendar? now would be the time to raise your hand.
Mr. Mayor, I see no hands raised.
Okay, thank you. And I will entertain a motion.
I make a motion to approve consent calendar.
Second.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Can you please call?
Deputy Mayor Bonilla.
Yes.
Councilmember Goethals.
Yes.
Councilmember Pappen.
Yes.
Mayor Rodriguez.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
All right. That was a good call to get that knocked out. Now the question is, do we try anything else?
Maybe public comment?
As long as there's no public comment. Does staff agree with that? Because we have, how many hands do we have raised that might want to speak?
I see one hand right now.
Okay, let's open up public comment, and this is for items that are currently not on the agenda.
First, the speaker is Rich Hedges.
Hi, this is Rich Hedges, Mayor Rodriguez and council members. I want to talk to you a little bit about the Get Around program. We have the ability to get money into this county every 2 years from the Lifeline program. Recently, the Lifeline program granted $320,000 for our Get Around program. There were $3.7 million available. It was undersubscribed to the tune of $1.6 million. So there will be a second call for projects after the first of the year. I am proposing that we extend the Get Around program to those disabled people within the county or within the city of San Mateo who are under the age of 65 who qualify for Ready Wheels. The reason that is important, and speaking with Director Kinzian, who oversees the program, the problem with the staff hours and qualifying people, these people are already qualified by Ready Wheels and would be allowed to apply, but of course not all would. The advantage of this is that Ready Wheels is oversubscribed. I was helped in writing the grand jury report in 2003 on Ready Wheels, and at that point we saw the problems coming, no fault of Ready Wheels, but just with the tsunami of the older folks that were coming into the network. So I have already checked with the CAD company. They have the facility to do it in vans. It would actually make it easier for our residents who are disabled to get to appointments on time, be picked up on time, which is not always the case with Ready Wheels. Just talk to the medical establishment, ask them how they feel. And again, no fault of Ready Wheels. So I think it has a lot of merits. It is an equity priority community, which Lifeline is supposed to support. And quite frankly, it would probably ensure the longevity of this program and money from Lifeline, which is a great benefit to our community. If you're not familiar with it, I don't think I have the time tonight to go through all the things, but it transports our seniors and hopefully our future disabled members, all of them that qualify for Ready Wheels, to their doctor's appointments, to recreation, to spend their money in venues that put sales tax in our coffers. And so hopefully you'll join with me and with Ms. Kinzian and make a proposal to the next Lifeline call for projects to actually expand our program for the Get Around program. Thank you.
Thank you. I see no other hands raised, and so you can bring it back to council.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to close public comment. And
it is 7:29.
All right. Well, I will begin to, we're going to have our item number 13. It is ordinance introduction, transition to district-based elections for council members, public hearing number 5. And I'll have our city clerk, Patrice Olds, wait 30 more seconds just to make sure we are exactly on time before we begin. Okay, looks like we're 7:30.
Okay, sorry. You able to hear me?
Yes.
Yes, we are.
Okay, great, thank you. So good evening, Mayor Rodriguez, members of the City Council. I'm Drew Corbett, the City Manager. Also with me here tonight is Paul Mitchell from Redistricting Partners. And the item before you is public hearing number 5 on our transition to district elections. So just by way of background, as I mentioned, we are on our 5th and final public hearing tonight. And tonight is the introduction of the ordinance. So there's no further map changes. And we'll also be looking to get a decision on election sequencing. Following tonight's direction, we'll be coming back on November the 15th with the adoption of the ordinance on the consent calendar. So this is the final map. It is final map 3B. And as you'll notice, based on the discussion that we had at the October 14th public hearing number 4, we've replaced the district letters with numbers. So the district that used to be letter C is now District 1. The district that was formerly letter E is now District 2. The district that was formerly letter D is now District 3. And then A and B are labeled as 4 or 5 and 5 or 4 respectively. So those are the two that still need to be dispositioned in terms of which order they will be. So with that, the considerations tonight for council are to hold the public hearing and then determine which district should be up for election in 2022, either A or B. And that will be numbered as district number 5, with then the remaining district numbered as number 4. So then that would mean in 2022 for that election, the odd numbered districts 1, 3, and 5 would be up. And in 2024, the even numbered districts 2 and 4 would be up for election. And then finally, we're looking for council to introduce the ordinance approving the final district elections map. And with that, that concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Thank you, Drew. Do we have any questions from City Council members? All right, I am not seeing any questions. I would like to then, I don't have any questions either. Let's open up a public comment and hear from the community. Now would be the time to raise your hand if you'd like to comment on this item.
Giving it a moment. I have no hands raised, Mr. Mayor. Oh, I do. Mr. Rafferty. Oh. He lowered his hand.
There it goes.
Okay.
I just wanted to congratulate you on reaching this point. I hope you understand that I wasn't able to formally grant an extension that didn't have the guarantee that the statute requires. That's something that can't be taken for granted in some other jurisdictions, and it wasn't appropriate to have a precedent to do that. But we've gotten there, and as you can see, I have no desire to, and never had any desire to litigate on this. I'm very glad to see that the process has gone forward. There was some discussion at your last session, which I monitored, about the sequence of elections, and for the detailed reasons I've put in writing, I think any of these options are appropriate. So I congratulate you for getting through the process, and I believe it will be one that works well for the city for many years to come. I hope it hasn't been disruptive to you or to any of the candidates seeking elections. I think it'll open a lot of opportunities and hopefully integrate the minority community better into the political life of the city. So congratulations. Thank you. And also I want to say that your city clerk did an excellent job, as working, of course, with your demographer, who always does well. So I hope to use this as a model for other jurisdictions when they say, how do we reach out to the public and how do we document what we've done? So thank you for getting this job accomplished.
Thank you. I have no other speakers.
Okay. If there's no other speakers, then I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to council for additional questions and or discussion. Would any council member like to speak on this? All right. So specifically, Drew, what do you need us to answer, and in terms of the exact districts and when we think they should be up? Is that what we're trying to solidify? Okay.
Yes.
Again, nobody wants to talk on this? This has to be a first. All right, I guess I'll go first. So I think that, as I mentioned in my comments last time, my reasoning of how we should be sequencing this is that it seems to me like there's definitely 2 districts that really should be up, and those are all districts that contain current sitting council members who would need to run for re-election. And I know that's District 1 and 3, I believe. And then there's one district that I don't think it makes sense at all to have up, and that would be the North Central District. I forget that the number is at 2. 2. And then the real question becomes the Lagoon District, which is 5, and the Beresford District, which is 3. And I've heard different arguments on this. I think I heard enough that probably the council is looking to put the district number 5 on this upcoming ballot. I personally, out of fairness to also Beresford, I personally believe that it should be a random coin toss, but I have a feeling my colleagues are going to feel differently. And so maybe some of them will say something differently now. Okay, it looks like.
I'm Mr. Mayor.
Yes.
I don't know if you can see my raised hand, but.
I cannot.
Okay. Well,
I can't see your video or raised hand.
I guess I didn't. I did, but I didn't. Anyway, I am totally fine with the fair as it can be coin toss for that particular subject. I'm fine with the numbering of the districts for the 2022 and 2024 election, with odd numbers in 22 and even numbers in 23 to initially get us started. And yeah, those are my only thoughts there. Thank you.
Okay. Do we have any other thoughts on this? Councilmember Patton. Yes.
Sorry, I should be using my electronic hand raising. There are trade-offs to choosing whether you want to choose the district on the east side of the freeway or Beresford Hillsdale. I don't know what we're going to call these ones. Shoreview. I mean, it's a mixture of neighborhoods. So anyway, you know the one I'm talking about. Because there's that thought about perhaps it hasn't had representation in a while, but then there's this idea of you may want to have that particular district in a presidential election as opposed to a gubernatorial election. So there are trade-offs, and I'm not prepared to trade one for the other right now. So I guess I'm saying I could go for the coin toss too.
All right. Councilmember Goethals, do you have anything to add to that, or?
No, I think it's been an excellent process to get us to this point, and now we can put it over the finish line, and that's it.
All right. So I'll go back to staff. And what other matters do you need us to discuss besides making a motion?
Use a quarter for the coin toss. That's all I can think of.
So if I could ask the city attorney if this is something that we need to do now so that the ordinance can be, so that the first reading can occur, or can this occur after the fact?
I would recommend that the council decide now as to which district should be up in 2022. I mean, I'm also interested to hear from redistricting partners to see if how other jurisdictions have handled this kind of situation, see what their experience has been.
Yeah, so first off, I'm sure you saw the letter from Scott Rafferty, and he is correct in that certain agencies have utilized looking at different voting patterns for protected classes and trying to balance either bringing those protected classes to a point where they can affect the outcome of an election sooner by numbering them so that their election comes up sooner, or putting them in an election where they're likelier to have a higher ability to affect the outcome of an election, traditionally in a gubernatorial election cycle when Latinos, and just to be more specific to his point, lower socioeconomic status Asian communities are higher turnout in some of those. High socioeconomic Asian communities are generally higher turnout in the presidentials. So that is definitely common. What you're considering, a coin toss, we've actually once before seen a drawing of numbers from a hat in order to devise the numbering system. So it is something that it seems as though it would be fair if there's kind of just equal balance of arguments on either side. And my only suggestion is that you probably want to have your legal counsel be the one tossing the coin, but sorry to put you on the spot. But other than that, I think that sounds like you're having the right conversation and thinking about it the right way.
Great, thank you.
I will just add one more thing, if I may, Mr. Mayor.
Yes, please.
That, the reason why I recommend that the council decide now is because the sequencing must be part of the ordinance. So if you're introducing the ordinance, then you should include the sequencing now. And, also the council does have broad discretion here. I think there's, either having was formerly District A and kind of blue along the shoreline as up in 2022. There's legal support for that, as well as what's formerly District B. And up in 2022, which I think is what you meant when you said up. That is 1 and 3 would be up in 2022, along with one remaining district. So again, drawing of straws out of a hat isn't really necessary here, since you're down to 2 districts. I have to find a coin quickly. It does not have to be city attorney. It can be the city clerk. City clerk is a coin handy.
City clerk does not have a coin. There's no money in council chamber.
Who'd have thought this would be the most difficult part of the redistricting process?
Right. No kidding. No
How's
kidding.
the credit card? Okay.
Maybe if the city manager has a coin handy.
I have a foreign coin.
Does it
I
have a
have to
lid
go
on
out to my vehicle. I'll be right back.
Mr. Mayor, I do have a coin if you need it. This is Rich.
Are you on site?
I am not on site.
I will go out to my vehicle and I will witness Persona flipping the coin.
So this is the biggest snag we've hit so far.
Now I have to tell all my staff to watch this hearing because it's going to be the most exciting part of our redistricting cycle.
Yeah.
Well, we do what we can to liven up the process.
They're all the other cities are going to be jealous when they hear about this.
The excitement anticipate builds. A quarter is located. It is duly witnessed, and hopefully Persona knows how to flip a coin.
Deputy City Clerk Joan Diskin just brought me a quarter. So I can bring that down if you don't want to use a foreign coin.
No, it won't be. Drew's getting a real coin out of his car.
if he can find one.
How are things at the library there, Diane? Yeah, how are things at the library there?
Do you need a book?
Grab one. Yeah, I'll pick it up later.
Okay, I'll get one for you.
Your choice.
You want me to tell a joke?
Sure.
I don't know if I told this one before, but it's clean. Why is it that elevator jokes are so popular?
Why?
Because they hit on every level.
That's a good one. How far away is Drew's car?
Okay, I've got Patrice in here to witness. What I would propose is that if the coin lands on heads, that District A goes into the number 5 slot to be part of the 2022 election, and if the coin lands on tails, that District B would go into the 5 slot to be put up in the 2022 election. So heads is District A in 2022, tails is District B in 2022.
Sounds good.
We can't see.
Ready? Whoops.
We saw the coin.
I reflip.
Whoa. Drew's trying to hit me with the coin.
Okay, it landed on tails. So that would be District B going into the 2022 election and being labeled as District 5.
Great. And I know I don't have it up in front. Which one was B again?
Beresford Hillsdale.
Okay.
Need a motion?
Yes, please.
All right, so I will move that we, okay, just give me a second. That we introduce the ordinance to transition to district-based elections for council members. And based upon the map that we've identified with the district boundaries and the sequencing that we have just determined, which is districts 1, 3, and 5 will be up for election in November of 2022.
I will second that.
Okay, thank you. Councilmember Pappen?
Yes.
Mayor Rodriguez?
Yes.
Councilmember Goethals?
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Bonilla?
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Okay. Is there any other items on this that we need to discuss before we move on? All right. I will close the public hearing and we are going to go on to the next item, which is item number 14, public hearing, ordinance introduction and resolution adoption of impact and in-lieu fee update. And we have Brian Alexander, Senior Management Analyst.
All right, hopefully everyone can see my screen. So Good evening, Mayor Rodriguez and members of council. My name is Brian Alexander, and I'm a senior management analyst in the Community Development Department. The next item before you this evening is a public hearing to review the proposed changes to the city's impact and in-lieu fees following our citywide fee update. So as indicated in this slide, we are in the home stretch of our citywide fee study, and I'll quickly recap the process to date and how we got here. As you'll recall, in fiscal year 1920 and 2021, Council included an update of the city's development impact fees as one of the goals in its strategic plan. This review of the impact and in-lieu fees was part of a broader examination of several fees across the city that has been conducted over the last year and a half. This began with an update of our cost allocation plan and was followed by a study of our development-related user fees and community developments, which we presented to Council back in February. In June, we brought the findings of our two Nexus studies to Council to discuss some potential restructuring and changes to the infrastructure costs associated with several of our fees. And as part of that discussion, Council directed staff to return with some policy options for reducing the burden of impact and in-lieu fees on affordable housing projects in San Mateo, which we did bring back and discuss during a September 7th study session. And so staff are continuing to have discussions with members of the development community as a follow-up to that study session, and we'll be returning to Council in the very near future with some additional policy options informed by those discussions. And so that brings us to tonight's public hearing. So as a reminder, as a part of this process, we made an effort to conduct as comprehensive a review as possible with regard to our fees. We looked at impact and in-lieu fees across community development, public works, and parks and recreation. This slide shows you which fees were part of this review, and there are also 3 fees that were not formally studied as part of this process, primarily because they were very recently updated. And then lastly, before we discuss the proposed changes, I'm going to run through some of the methodology and legal requirements associated with the impact fee revisions. So first, impact fees can only be utilized to fund infrastructure and capital related costs. No operating costs can be funded through impact fees. When we are evaluating impact fees, we are really looking at different growth projections utilizing a level of standard methodology, which means we're trying to determine what the infrastructure needs are to maintain San Mateo's existing level of standard and service for its key service areas. When we looked at city growth, our consultants utilized regional growth projections from the Association of Bay Area Governments, or ABAG, as well as the city's own master plans or capital project plans. We also looked at the type of development. For residential projects, we utilized dwelling units to determine future impacts to the city, whereas non-residential project impacts are based on square footage. It's a very important component of ensuring that the nexus is relatable and proportionate to the type of development. Finally, impact fees are governed by AB 1600, the Mitigation Fee Act, which requires they meet 5 requirements noted on this slide. First, there needs to be a clear purpose so the city can explain why the fee is being collected. Second, the city needs to define how revenue from the fee will be used. Third, there needs to be a clear benefit relationship between the fee and the type of the development. Fourth, there needs to be a clear need for the impact fee and a relationship between the type of the development and the fee that it is charged. And then lastly, the fee must be based upon the share of the new development's impact on the city's infrastructure needs. And this idea of proportionality and fair share is something we'll return to throughout tonight's presentation. So now we will take a look at the proposed changes to our fees, first reviewing the direction staff received from council at the June 7th meeting. First, there was general agreement that the fees should be set at a level that allows the city to recoup its infrastructure costs. And so the changes before you tonight and the proposed fee levels included in the resolution follow that guidance. Second, in June, staff and consultants made some recommendations for structural changes to the city's impact and in-lieu fees, namely revise the childcare development fees to apply to both residential and commercial developments, and then to create a single wastewater capacity charge, doing away with the South Trunk Sewer Area impact fee, the wastewater treatment plant phase 2 expansion fee, and the sewer connection charge. And so these changes make up the bulk of the proposed amendments to the city's municipal code in the ordinance being introduced tonight. In addition, staff also plan to consolidate the city's park in lieu and park impact fee into a single impact fee. That change will come before you sometime in early 2022, along with some proposed changes to the city's program for allowing credits against the impact fee for on-site amenities. The third main direction from council was that all planning applications that have already been submitted should be subject to the existing fees rather than these revised increased fees. And you'll see that's the case in the resolution before you tonight. And then finally, council directed staff to explore policies either through fee subsidies or waivers that might incentivize the production of affordable housing. And again, as I mentioned earlier, we've been holding a series of conversations with developers following council direction at the September 7th study session, and expect to return to council in the next few months with more detailed policy recommendations to that effect. So now I'm going to take some time to look at the specific fees we are proposing to change tonight and how they'll be changing. First is the art and public places fee. So this fee applies to commercial and multifamily projects with a building permit valuation that's greater or equal to $3 million. A developer can work with the city and the Civic Arts Committee to provide art on premises to receive credit against the fee. They can pay into the Art and Public Places Fund in lieu of providing art, or they can pursue some combination of both. In reviewing this fee, staff and consultants looked at the average annual value of the public art commissioned by the city over the last several years, as well as the cost of an art master plan. So while the city does not currently have an art master plan, staff and consultants believed that it would be helpful to more clearly define the goals, outcomes, and public art needs within the city. And so in combining these costs, we arrived at a full cost fee of 1.19% of the valuation. Because the existing fee amount is currently codified in the city's municipal code, we're recommending an amendment to the section of the code to make this change and allow for greater flexibility in the future. So the proposal is to amend that section of the code to allow council to set the fee by resolution and then update the fee amount in the accompanying resolution tonight. The next fee is the child care development fee. So the city currently levies this fee on large commercial developments to mitigate the need for child care facilities and spaces driven by those developments. In reviewing this fee, staff and consultants looked at both the existing and projected demand for child care in San Mateo, along with construction costs for various types of facilities. So through this evaluation, staff and consultants developed a nexus between residential uses and child care needs, and based on discussion at the June 7th City Council meeting, settled on charging the fee to both residential and commercial uses, eliminating the 10,000 square foot floor for charging the fee. So in other words, commercial developments of all sizes will now be subject to the child care development fee. And so as for the proposed changes before you tonight, they rescind the two resolutions that initially established this fee and add a chapter to the city's municipal code to codify the child care development fee moving forward. And then again, in addition, the fee amounts are updated via resolution. Next, Public Works staff and Matrix Consulting Group looked at the transportation improvement fee, which applies across a wide range of projects and mitigates the impact of future development on the city's transportation infrastructure. So in reviewing this fee, staff considered a number of different factors, but primarily wanted to ensure that the project listing of future transportation improvements was up to date and that it was reflective of current construction costs. So the proposed changes here include amending the existing subsection of the city's municipal code to align the land use categories there with those that are included in the Nexus study to provide more clarity to developers and staff. And like with the previous fees, the fee amounts and the applicable land uses are being updated by resolution. And then the last set of fees we're looking at tonight are the sewer-related impact fees. Again, Public Works staff worked with a separate consultant to study and update these fees. Currently, the city charges 3 sets of sewer impact or connection fees: the wastewater treatment plant phase 2 expansion fee, and sewer connection fees are charged on all projects, while those located in the South Trunk service area, which is bounded here by this blue border, also pay a South Trunk sewer improvement fee to fund improvements for that area in particular. So as mentioned earlier in the presentation, the city will now be moving towards a single set of wastewater capacity charges that apply across the city, essentially the entire system, rather than a single service area like South Trunk stands to benefit from future infrastructure improvements, so those costs can be spread out across the city. The fee is based on an average cost approach, and new connections would pay a proportionate share of the average cost of existing and planned facilities needed to meet the demands of our service area. So in order to alter that fee structure, the proposed changes include repealing the existing sections of the code for the sewer connection and South Trunk fees, adding a new section for the new wastewater capacity charge, and then finally setting the new fee amounts by resolution. And then lastly, just to reiterate, there are 2 remaining components of the citywide fee study that staff continue to work on. First, the park impact and in-lieu fee updates. Staff are working to consolidate that into a single park impact fee and also update the city's credit program for developers to receive credit in lieu of paying the fee. So these changes are a bit more involved than those before you tonight. So staff will be returning to council in early 2022 with this item. And then the affordable housing incentives discussion is ongoing with multiple developers. As a reminder, staff are working to determine the right mix of incentives relative to our impact and in-lieu fees to increase the production of affordable housing. And again, staff will be bringing that item back to council in the very near future for further discussion. So the actions before you tonight are introduce an ordinance to amend, rescind, or add sections to the city's municipal code as outlined in tonight's presentation to update the city's impact and in-lieu fees, and adopt a resolution to establish the new wastewater capacity charge and update the fee amounts and the land uses subjected to those fees. As a note, there's a 60-day waiting period before new or increased fees on development can take effect. So as a result, the proposed ordinance will take effect 60 days after adoption. The accompanying resolution will take effect upon the effective date of the ordinance or 60 days after adoption, whichever comes later. So that concludes tonight's staff presentation, and I am happy to answer any questions about the proposed actions.
Thank you, Brian. And we'll bring it back to City Council for any questions we may have. Please raise your hand if you have any questions. Okay, not seeing any questions, so maybe we'll open it up public comment now. So now would be a time if you're a member of the public who would like to comment on this, please raise your hand. Okay, I'm not seeing any. Can you confirm that, City Clerk?
Yes, Mr. Mayor, there are no hands raised.
Okay, I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to City Council. And again, Brian, I just want to state that the fact that we have no questions and little comments is not, it reflects a great presentation that covered everything.
It's okay. I'm not taking it personally.
All right. Do we have any other comments questions or comments by City Council? Councilmember Patton.
I just wanted to say I concur. It was very comprehensive. We didn't take raising fees lightly. There's a rational basis for doing it, and I am in agreement with each of these proposed changes. I think it simplifies and it makes them measure up to what the city's expenses are. So I'm ready to adopt it.
Deputy Mayor Bonilla.
I just want to say that also I feel that it's very important that these fees be examined and adjusted on a regular basis because things change. I feel actually very happy about the change to the sewer capacity fee. Better reflects the actual ongoing costs that we're going to be incurring, and I think it distributes all of that fairly. I noticed there's a choice though between the 80% and the 100% when I was reading, and I'm not sure I caught that in the discussion there. But anyway, I approve though of these, and I'm interested in hearing again whether we're going to go for the 80% or 100%. Thank you.
So the recommendation by the consultant was to go for the 80% cost recovery because it's based on a series of estimates and it's a more conservative approach. I don't know if anyone from Public Works might want to jump in to respond to that, but that was sort of the rationale for pursuing that 80%.
Thank you. No need for other people. I understand that approach. And I also understand we can always come back to these later if we find that we're off. So thank you very much.
Yes.
Councilmember Pepin, back to you.
Just one more comment. Thank you, Mayor. I think that the child care one in particular really moves the needle on very, very important city service. Not a service, actually. It'll go towards construction, but it is a much needed area, and I am pleased that we've taken the direction we're taking with increasing that fee.
All right, I concur 100% with the comments from Councilmember Papin and Deputy Mayor Bonilla, and I don't really have much more to add. Other than that, I will entertain motions at this time if there's no other comments.
I move that we adopt the ordinance. Just trying to get it in front of me here. Or do you need more specific, or is that good enough?
It's on the screen.
Oh, well, that was too easy.
Magic, just for you.
Do you need separate motions for each ordinance? I'm assuming you might. I mean, one's in a resolution and one's an ordinance.
If
Do
I
you need
may.
separate motions
Yes,
for each?
yes, please, Prasanna. Sorry.
Yes, so you can move the staff recommendation by one motion. That's completely fine. You don't need two separate actions, which would be to introduce the ordinance as identified on the screen, and then to adopt the resolution, and then we would come back with the ordinance adoption at the next meeting.
Okay, so I move that we introduce the ordinance per staff recommendation and adopt the resolution per staff's recommendation.
Second.
Great. Thank you, Madam Clerk. Can you please call roll?
With pleasure. Councilmember Pappen.
Yes.
Deputy Mayor Bonilla.
Yes.
Councilmember Goethals.
Yes.
And Mayor Rodriguez.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thanks again, Brian. Great presentation.
Thank you.
All right, so we're going to move on to old business, item number 15, COVID-19 update. And we have our city manager, Drew Corbett, to present.
Yes, thank you. Good evening, Mayor Rodriguez, members of the City Council. I have just a very brief COVID-19 update this evening. Just want to start with a bit of an operational update for City Hall employees. We've got those employees due to return on a set hybrid schedule starting on January the 1st. We do want to provide them with time to prepare for this transition. So this basically maintains the status quo through the holidays. I do want to point out that almost 90% of our merit employees are already working regularly on site and have been for some time. This is just predominantly the folks that are some of our City Hall based employees that have been able to work basically full-time from home. We will continue that through the end of the year and then transition them back onto a more set schedule on January the 1st. For our library, the main library is now open from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Thursday. So what this does, and this was effective today, this adds 6 hours a week to the weekly schedule at the main library and gets it to about 87% of its pre-pandemic hours per week. We're still looking for the branches to hire per diem staff so we can expand hours there. So that's ongoing. And as we're able to bring on staff, we will start to expand those hours. In terms of council confirmation, I'm looking for confirmation this evening of the continuing need for the local emergency proclamation. This confirmation is required every 60 days. And this does continue to provide us with flexibility as we still have health orders in effect. And then I'm also looking for confirmation for the actions taken in response to the emergency proclamation, which is the continued modifications to City Hall operations. That concludes my presentation, and I'm happy to take any questions.
Great, thank you, Drew. Do we have any questions for our city manager? I have a question that I've been asked, especially from my wife. Have you heard anything more about the counties going to be distributing vaccines to 5 to 11-year-olds?
I have not heard anything other than they are preparing to do so, but I have not gotten any of the specifics. But I would expect something any day now.
Great. Any other questions? Okay, I would like to open up public comment. If you'd like to comment on this, please raise your hand at this time.
Mr. Mayor, I have no hands raised.
Okay, I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to City Council for any other questions or comments.
I support confirming the city manager's requested confirmations.
Great, I agree. Anybody disagree with that? Okay, I don't have it in front of me. Do we need to vote on that, or?
Yes. I think you can make a motion on that. Yes.
Okay, so moved.
Second.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Bonilla.
Yes.
Councilmember Goethals.
Yes.
Councilmember Pappen.
Yes.
Mayor Rodriguez.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Thank you. Thank you, Drew. We're going to move on to new business, item number 16, ordinance introduction, campaign regulations, and we have our city attorney, Prasanna Rasaya, is going to present to us.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Mayor, Council. Thank you to Patrice for bringing up the presentation. There we go. So this is in response to a request that was made at a prior council meeting to look at a couple of items relating to really two issues in the campaign ordinance, one relating to in-kind contributions, and the other relating to the aggregation of contributions. Next slide, please. Okay, so under existing campaign rules, there is, of course, contribution limit. There's $500 for individuals and $1,000 for organizations. And currently, the definition of contribution actually excludes the donation of goods by an individual. So in other words, one could donate goods to a candidate or a candidate committee, and that would not count as a contribution under our current ordinance. And then also in our ordinance, there is no requirement to aggregate or combine or count together contributions for purposes of a contribution limit. And I'll explain that a little bit more. The next slide, please. Okay, so the proposed changes would be twofold. One would be to now count goods or services received by a candidate at no charge or at a discount from fair market value. Those would now be counted as contributions, except for volunteer personal services. And then second, there's a new section that's being proposed that would aggregate contributions for purposes of the contribution limit. And that plays out in a few different ways. So for example, if you had a contribution by an individual and a contribution by an organization that individual directs or controls, those two contributions would be counted together for purposes of the contribution limit. And then second, if you had two or more organizations controlled by the same group of people, or more precisely, a majority of the same persons, those contributions would also be counted together for purposes of the limit. And then finally, if you had an individual and an organization that was majority owned by that individual, contributions by those two, an individual and that organization, those would likewise be counted together for purposes of the contribution limit. And incidentally, the distinction between the first category and the first one I was referring to an organization that the individual directs or controls. And then the last example, I was referring to an organization that is majority owned by that individual.
Prasanna, quick question.
Yes.
So if an individual wants to give you a contribution, and the maximum contribution, let's say, right? And then his business wants to give you the maximum contribution, do those get aggregated? Can you only accept one?
Well, you said his business.
Yeah.
So if his business is an entity that individual directs or controls, then the campaign can only accept one of those two maximum contributions.
Thanks.
Or similarly, if the individual owned that, had a majority ownership of that business, same principle.
Okay. Thank you.
And I will say that those two primary changes, as for contributions and the aggregation of contributions, that is really patterned on state law. There's a state regulation, and there's also a state statute that are cited in the staff report. And the wording is pretty much identical to state law. And I think the benefit of that is, as the Fair Political Practices Commission comes out with advice letters, or if there are cases that come out that interpret those, that regulation or that statute, then, we can look to that to interpret our own regulations. So I tried to be consistent with state law in that regard. The last thing I'll mention is more minor. There's a proposed change to the ordinance under which ballot measure campaigns would also be exempt from contribution limits, in addition to a referendum or initiative petition. The reason why I propose that change is it simply reflects existing law. There's a US Supreme Court case from 1981 that already established that principle. So this would simply codify that. Next slide, please. And that's the end of my presentation. So happy to take questions.
Great. Thank you, Prasanna. Are there any questions for our city attorney regarding this from council?
I will add one more thing, which is that as proposed, the ordinance, if adopted by the council at the next meeting, it's designed to go into effect on January 1st, which is more than 30 days. And the reason for that is because that's the start of a new campaign reporting period. So it's designed to exactly match that new cycle.
Great, thank you. Okay, I'm not seeing a bunch of hands here. I would like to open up public comment. Now would be the time to raise your hand if you'd like to comment on this topic.
I see no hands raised, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to council for any additional questions or closing comments on this. Councilmember Pappen.
Yeah, I mean, I like the idea that we're mirroring the state definitions because I think it avoids confusion. As a practical matter, while our changes to the aggregation rules do have the impact of sort of restricting limits now, we will have smaller districts to run in, and there are a smaller number of voters to reach. So I think we're okay with the limits we have. I would suggest that the caps be visited fairly regularly. I know when I ran the first time, the caps hadn't been changed in 15 years, and yet the expenses with things like postage and those sorts of things had gone up. And most campaign money is used to reach the voters directly. Those are the biggest ticket items. So I would just request that in the future, there be a regular review. I know we have reviews after each election, but that the caps in particular be looked at to make sure that while there's a desire, and I understand the desire to want to keep campaign limits in place, we also want to make it that people can raise enough money to reach the voters directly. So that's just kind of where I'm coming from. But I like the idea of mirroring the state definitions. I think it's very constructive to avoiding confusion.
Great, thank you. I too am very committed to increasing transparency and making our campaign rules as clearer to interpret, especially for first-time candidates. I think these are common sense changes that, along with our move to district elections, is going to significantly lower the barriers to running for office. And I really think that the next reform that I hope we can implement is creating the voluntary campaign spending limits. And I think that would be kind of the last critical piece. And hopefully that could be implemented by our 2024 election. That's my hope. That's all I have. I really support these. Anybody else? Is that Councilmember Pappen? Do you have more comments, or is there answer? Anyone else like to chime in on this? Nope. I will entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve.
All right, and I'll second that. Okay. Madam Clerk, can you please call roll?
And just for a point of clarification, this would be to introduce the ordinance, by the way.
Thank you.
Okay. Deputy Mayor Bonilla.
Yes.
Mayor Rodriguez.
Yes.
Councilmember Goethals.
Yes.
Councilmember Pappen.
Yes.
Motion carries 4-0.
Great. Let me find. Okay, the next item under new business is number 17, Reimagine Samtrans recommended network update. And we have Sue Ellen Atkinson, Principal Transportation Planner.
Hi, good evening, Mayor Rodriguez. Council members, thanks for having me tonight. Sue Ellen Atkinson with the Public Works Department, Principal Transportation Planner. I'm here to introduce the Reimagined Samtrans Recommended Network. I'm happy to share that we have Amy Linehan and Jonathan Stukecki from Samtrans here tonight to present on this topic. I'm sorry, Jonathan. And they'll also be able to answer any questions that you have. So with that, I'll hand it off to Samtrans to start the presentation.
Great. Thank you. Thank you, Sue Ellen. Thank you, Mr. Mayor, council members. Thank you for giving us some time in your agenda tonight to provide you an update on our Reimagined Samtrans project. We're actually really excited to be with you here tonight at this phase of the project. For those of you that are familiar with Reimagined Samtrans, we spent about a year and a half now analyzing our bus network from top to bottom, thinking about what works, what doesn't work, talking to our riders about what works for them, what doesn't work for them, and what they see as the perfect Samtrans service in San Mateo County. We collected everything we learned from our analysis and our outreach, and now we have developed a new recommended bus network that we're really excited to show you tonight. I'd like to consider this a conversation. Jonathan's going to go through a PowerPoint. He's going to provide you a little bit more information about the project. For those people who aren't familiar, some information about what we heard from riders in San Mateo during our last round of outreach. And then he's going to do a deep dive, basically, on the changes that we're recommending in San Mateo specifically. And then we're happy to take any questions you may have. I'm not going to belabor this. I'm going to turn it over to Jonathan to go through the presentation. Take it away, Jonathan.
Thanks, Amy, and thank you so much for having us this evening. So going into the agenda, as Amy said, that we'll look at the background and timeline quickly. We'll go over the recommended network that we're presenting, and specifically the changes in the city of San Mateo. And then we'll talk a little bit about outreach and how folks can give feedback to the network that we'll be presenting. And of course, we'll be available for questions and discussion after the presentation. So as Amy said, we are now in public outreach phase 3. And once we finish this outreach, we'll be taking a preferred and recommended network to our board of directors for adoption and then begin implementing in the summer of 2022. Quick refresher on the 3 alternatives that were presented in phase 2 that we received comments on. First, I want to highlight how we did the outreach during phase 2. So we had virtual public meetings, 4 of them. They were multilingual, and they covered 4 regions of the county. We did a lot of community pop-up events, including 2 at Hillsdale Station. We met with stakeholders such as the San Mateo Chamber of Commerce, the San Mateo United Housing Association. And then we had meetings with our advisory groups, of course, our bus operators, and we utilized some CBOs in the county to get the word out. So as a reminder, a refresher for folks, alternative 1, we had 3 different alternatives that we presented in phase 2. Alternative 1 was really focused on high frequency buses, so buses that come very often. Alternative 2 was really focused on getting that connection between ourselves and the regional transit, so rail, such as Caltrain and BART, BTA, Muni, etc. And alternative 3 was really looking at having a lot of coverage across the county, really emphasizing having buses go everywhere in the county. And when we looked at the respondents' choices, 37% said that connections were important. 34% said frequency, and 29% said coverage. And I'll get to, in the preferred network, but point out here that there wasn't a clear winner. Obviously, there was some priorities. And we did take a little bit from each of those alternatives in order to create the preferred network. Specifically for the city of San Mateo, these are some of the things that we heard Weekend service is very important to folks. Later service in the day would be good. Avoid operating on 28th Ave and keep the 292 the way it is. So now going into that new network, talk about how we built it. So the backbone of the preferred network and how it's structured was really that community engagement and listening to people about what they want and need in a bus transit system. We also use ridership and productivity reports, so there is some database to it. And then we had an equity need analysis, so really looking at where buses are needed the most in the county. We did market research and market analysis as well. And so we came up with 3 goals that we wanted the recommended network to hit. The first one talking about equity, really prioritizing buses in high need communities and finding the resources to do that in underused and duplicative routes. Efficiency, creating faster, reliable service, looking at making routes more direct and consolidating routes where we can, and connections, really looking at where we can connect to transit hubs and job centers. And I wanted to talk a little bit more about the prioritizing equity. When we're talk about that, what does it mean for Samtrans? Is that we really want to prioritize service requests, additions in our equity areas that we've identified. We want to prioritize infrastructure in those areas as well. Again, look to reallocate service in low ridership areas that are not in equity zones, and really limit that new service in non-equity zones to be able to provide more service in the equity zones. And then finally, willing to accept lower ridership or productivity for routes that we know are in a equity zone where folks really need. So talking about what does that mean in the city of San Mateo, on the right there, you have a map of where the equity zones are in the city of San Mateo that we've identified. And so the increased frequency to the ECR on the weekends that I'll talk about was a response to increasing service in those zones. Additional transit connections along the 292, increased frequency on the Route 250 to CSM, increased frequency midday and evening service on the 294, and weekend service being added to the 295. So with that, I'll get into some of the specifics of the routes. So the 292, which folks said, please don't change it. We have not changed it much. We added an enhancement to it, which is that it will now serve Millbrae Station. So it's another area where folks can ride the 292 to. And then when it enters into San Francisco, we're proposing a limited stop service. What this means is the stops would be slightly more spaced out and have a fewer stops, which will allow us to travel a little bit quicker when we're in San Francisco. And we're going to mirror those stops off of our Foster City Express stops that are currently being utilized in the city. And then the frequency and hours of operation on the 292 remain the same. The 249, this is a new route that we're proposing from downtown San Mateo to the College of San Mateo. And we are proposing to have this run every 30 minutes during the weekdays, 60 minutes on Saturday and Sunday from 6 a.m. to 7 p.m. Weekdays and 8 a.m. to 7 p.m. on the weekends. And this route is really designed to be a direct route to the college from downtown. The Route 250, we are proposing to straighten it out a little bit and streamline it in downtown area, because the area that you see there in the dotted, that's kind of in the center where it's pointing, really had low ridership, and it was just taking more time to get to where people who were on the bus wanted to go. Also reduced some duplicative service. So the Route 294 serves Alameda de las Pulgas. So instead of having 2 buses serve the same area, reduce that area so that we can put travel time elsewhere. And then looking at traveling on Hillsdale Boulevard instead of Highway 92 up to College of San Mateo. And then with those routing changes, we're also proposing some increase in frequency, both on the weekday and weekend. The weekend going to service every 30 minutes, and the weekday during peak time going to every 15 minutes in the morning. The Route 294, this route goes from Half Moon Bay into the city of San Mateo. There's two deviations on it, one to the College of San Mateo and the other one to the San Mateo Medical Center. And just on this route specifically, the ridership to the College of San Mateo and to the medical center is extremely low. So again, this is an area where this route in particular, those deviations are causing folks to travel longer on the bus, and that's not where they're going. And so we're proposing to remove those two locations off of this route. And then frequency would be increased on weekday evenings to every 60 minutes instead of every 2 hours. The Route 295, this route, we are recommending that it be shortened on the northern end to stop at Hillsdale Shopping Center. And the reason for that is there's a lot, not much ridership north of that. So again, that's taking travel time away from those that are really using the route. And for this one, we're recommending that weekend service be added. So right now it only runs during the weekdays. We're recommending that Saturday and Sunday be included and that the frequency be an hour, the same as weekday. And then Route 398, this route is a long route that goes into San Francisco, but is very duplicative of other services that we have, including the ECR, the 292, and in areas we have a new recommended route called the East Palo Alto Express, or EPX, that will cover the service area of 398. So we are proposing that that route no longer continue in the new service. And then Route ECR, this one had many alternatives, but for the most part, folks like the way that it is. So the no routing change other than at Daly City. We reduced the loops up on top on Fournoy Street, so it'll only stop at Daly City BART. And that'll, again, help with the travel time. And we also increased the frequency on this. So this one on weekends was every 20 minutes. We are proposing to move it to every 15 minutes during peak and midday on Saturday and Sunday, which will match weekday service levels. And the last change that I'll talk about is some school-focused service, our community routes 53 and 55 to Burrell Middle School. Currently, we have two different routes serving there, the 53 and the 55, and we are recommending that those two routes be combined. And you will see that for the most part, it's the same exact service area for riders, except along El Camino Real. But folks, students use the ECR, and then it's about a half mile, less than a half mile walk to the school from El Camino Real. And so, you know, we have met with the school and really talked to them and looking at ridership trends. Most of those students are just walking down and taking the ECR rather than utilize the community routes. There is an area on the Route 55, Poplar. We call it the Poplar Loop, Poplar to Clark Drive. Those students in this merger would have a longer travel time to school, about 10 minutes, but they will still have that service area. And then Route 53, riders will see no change at all. So in summary, service enhancements are the more frequent service on ECR, the 292 extension to Millbrae, the new Route 249, an increased frequency on the 250, the 295, and the 294. Service reallocation comes from the Route 250, no longer serving Alameda de Las Pulgas, the shortening of Route 295 to the Hillsdale Shopping Center, deviation removal on the 294, a consolidation of the 53 and 55, and the elimination of Route 398. So then briefly looking ahead and talking about outreach, We're currently in the outreach period. It is set to end on November 8th. And everything that I went over in the presentation and more, including all the recommendations for the entire county, are at reimaginesamtrans.com. There also, you can leave comments and feedback about the routes directly, and that will be recorded and reviewed by the team. We ask that folks do that by November 8th so that we have time to review those before we make the final recommendation that will go before our board of directors. And then if folks also don't feel comfortable using a computer or prefer to give their comments verbally, they are able to call our customer service team, and they can record it into the record for them. And I'll also mention that our customer service team can converse in multiple languages, I think about 100 of them. So we should have folks covered there. And you can also access the site in multiple languages. Virtual public meetings, like I talked about in phase 2, we have had those. I leave this slide in here to mention that we actually recorded every one of these meetings. And they, if they're not already, will be available very shortly on our Reimagine website for people to review and see what we talked about for the different regions if they're interested. And finally, before I turn it back over to Sue Ellen, I wanted to talk about implementation. So as I said in the timeline, we're looking at August 2022 to begin implementation. That's really the start of implementation. What we would propose in August 2022 are size neutral changes to the system, that reallocation of services so we wouldn't have to have additional workforce. And then starting in January 2023, we'll start implementing additional service or adds-on in the service. All told, with the recommended network, it would be an increase of about 10% to the Samtrans service network. And I just caveat this with one of our goals, something that we're keeping our tabs on is our workforce availability. So right now, we have a challenge with having enough operators, and we are working really hard in order to not only fill that gap, but also expand so that we can increase the service. But we don't want to do that without those operators available. We don't want canceled trips, and we don't want to degrade our reliability. And so a lot of the implementation will be in phases starting in January 2023 and dependent on having enough operators in order to operate the service. And with that, thank you so much, and I'll turn it back over to Sue Ellen.
Thanks, Jonathan. Thanks, Amy, for being here tonight. Council members, with that, we conclude the staff presentation, and I'm available for questions, and Jonathan and Amy are as well. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Any questions from council? Not seeing any hands raised. Okay. I'm going to open up public comment. We see it looks like there's a couple of folks that would like to speak on this. So,
yes, it looks like our first speaker is Lisa Diaz-Nash.
Good evening, Council, and thank you to Samtrans for the excellent presentation. My question is, how is the Reimagine Samtrans process being coordinated with the San Mateo General Plan? And going forward, as we think about where our future housing is going to be and the public transit needs, how are we going to make sure that what Reimagine Samtrans is doing is aligned with San Mateo's needs and vice versa? Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm happy to.
After public comment, we'll address that question. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Rayan Matashimi. Oops, hold on. I hit the wrong button.
Thank you. Good evening, City Council, Honorable Mayor. Just wanted to provide comment in support of increased frequency on high ridership lines that the Samtrans staff is suggesting in their network. I think that's a good thing. I wanted to point out some potential tripping points that I see with the location of just the general plan for service around Hillsdale Caltrain Station. I think it's good that we have a lot of bus lines serving our highest ridership Caltrain station. That's a good thing. I just want to point out that a lot of different bus lines will be accessing the station at different areas around the station. So it's important to have really high quality, easy to understand wayfinding at the station if we decide to have these buses stop at different locations around the station. As an example, Route 250 would access Hillsdale at 31st Avenue based on the maps, Route 251 at 28th Avenue, Route 294 would access Hillsdale Caltrain on ECR, if my understanding is correct, and Route 295 would not directly access Hillsdale Caltrain, it would end around Hillsdale Shopping Center. I think it would be interesting to see whether ridership would warrant extending it to Caltrain itself. Similarly, Route 292 would not directly access Hillsdale Caltrain. Well, it would be close, but it's also another bus line that I think we could consider providing more direct connection to our highest ridership Caltrain station. So I think that we should approach our station access plans with an integrated pedestrian transit bike safety or bike planning process that really takes into account all modes. I know that's a little bigger than just Reimagine Samtrans, but I look forward to finding ways to make this as accessible as possible, our stations as accessible as possible, and work on timing transfers so that transfers between train and bus work super well. And also, if possible, transfers between bus and bus work super well, because that can help different bus lines in the city work super well, because that can help people who live on certain bus lines access more areas of the city that are served by other bus lines. So I think that these are all really good things to consider. And I hope that we can, have a more integrated transit system with more service. I think it would be cool to explore ways to time transfers, not only between Caltrain, but between bus 249 or the new proposed route and bus 294, because they kind of meet up close to each other on Alameda de las Palgas around Highway 92. So I generally am supportive of this framework and hope that we can move to more connections around Hillsdale Caltrain station and make that a really good plan. Thank you.
Thank you. The next speaker is Rich Hedges.
Hi, thank you, Mayor Rodriguez and City Council members. I think it is very important, as the last speaker said, for wayfinding at the station, not only in where the buses stop, but also on the very large and long Caltrain platform. And not just for Samtrans buses, but also for the myriad of shuttles that bring people in from the office parks into Caltrain, so that they know where to catch the shuttle and where to get off. So the other thing I want to bring up is line 250. We've got to really be careful with cutting it to save time, because this line serves most of the equity priority communities in the city. We've already cut it out of North Shoreview at the last cuts and out of North Central. And it did speed my time up getting to the Caltrain station, but it did hamper people in those communities, especially when Samaritan House was in North Central, people riding the bus there. So I want to caution you again for any cuts in time on 250. I ride it often, and I see, especially when I catch it from the downtown station, see many of our people who work in the downtown area and live in Shoreview and Parkside. Many of them work in our restaurants. So thank you very much. I'll yield my time to anyone else.
Thank you. Next speaker is George Derby.
Good evening, everyone. I don't know if this feature already exists, and I just don't know exactly how to use it, but has real-time reporting of bus locations been considered as part of this plan? It seems like that would be a helpful facility. It'd probably require, I guess, an app, or maybe one exists and I don't know about it, so someone can inform me potentially. And the other thing I wanted to say is that some years ago, Route 292 was rerouted from downtown to Delaware Street, which is fine, but I think the placement of one particular bus stop didn't make sense. And I'm wondering if that is something that can be reconsidered as part of this program, or if there is some other place where I could send the details of what I think would be a better solution in that case. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. We have no other hands raised.
Great, thank you. I'm going to close public comment and bring it back to council. But before we begin, I wanted to give staff and Caltrans a chance to address some of the questions that were brought up by the public.
Thank you. Just the first question from Ms. Diaz-Nash about the reimagined process and the coordination with the general plan update. We made recommendations and suggestions to Samtrans based on our current adopted city plans, but we will be working with them as we progress forward with the updated circulation element as part of the General Plan 2040 effort. So I hope that was responsive to the question. And I believe, Jonathan, are you able to answer some of the questions about the connections at Hillsdale and the stops?
Yeah, absolutely. I would just add on to that about plans with any of the cities. You know, one of the things that I think is really important to remember for Reimagine is that this is a point in time study and implementation plan, which means that we know that there's still growth across all of San Mateo County, and we'll respond to that as buildings are built and developments are made in the county. So don't think that if it's not in here, that it's not possible in the next few years. We're able to adapt much quicker than others, and luckily, if there's a road, we can roll down it. So don't be discouraged. As far as the access and Caltrain, we're working with both Caltrain and the city staff for the city of San Mateo to really fine tune where exactly the buses will pick up and drop off around the Hillsdale station. So part of that recommended network will be that fine tuning. I agree with you. There's several different drop off locations. And so we want to try to stream that as much as possible, but make sure it also makes sense in the travel time for the route. So we'll continue to look at that. And then for wayfinding, we are working with the team over at Caltrain to make sure that that's very clear as we move forward. They opened the station not too long ago, so some fine tuning on wayfinding is what we're working on. And then the final one, the real-time on-time performance or updates, that's coming. We have to do an update to the hardware that's on the bus, essentially to transmit its location more often. And so that is happening actually this year. So by January 2023, you should start seeing real-time tracking, whether that's through the Google Transit app or our website. Both should have that component in the near future.
Okay, Deputy Mayor Bonilla.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. I'd like to say that I support that Samtrans is seeking to make its routes more efficient and serve as many as possible and in a more timely way. So I just want to chime in and double down on a couple things that some of our public said. One is making sure that transfers between modes are as efficient as possible to eliminate long waiting times. I want to make sure we take a second look at our equity priority neighborhoods and make sure they continue to be served as well as possible. And lastly, I think you just said that there will be a real-time tracking app available. So thank you very much for that. That will help people a lot.
Thank you. Any other council members like to comment on this? All right, I echo Deputy Mayor Bonilla's sentiments, and I want to thank everybody for the presentation and all the work you're doing on this. It's greatly appreciated. Okay, going to move on to reports and announcements. Anybody have a report and or announcement? Deputy Mayor Bonilla. You're on mute. You're laughing, but we can't hear you.
Yeah, Thanks. I talk to myself mostly. So, no, I didn't really have any to report, but I just want to say thank you to all the public who participated very well tonight. I really appreciate your input. And thank you to all my fellow council members. And staff.
And staff. Here. I'm not seeing any other hands. One thing I wanted to bring up, and I'm not sure really what to do with this, but I did want to bring it up because the time is ticking. As I'm sure you all well know, that our board of supervisors is looking at changing up the districts. And I just wanted to make sure that with the way our meetings are timed and their fast time schedule, that if we wanted to, as a council, to chime in, a couple of the districts break up our city or one of the ones, and who knows what they're going to ultimately be looking at. Is this something at all that we that anybody would want to discuss? Or I have a feeling like if we don't, then the next meeting, it's going to be like a couple of days before they make their decision. And so I just want to throw that out there just to make sure that if we're choosing not to, we're still making a choice. We're not just letting it happen. So, okay, maybe not a high priority. All right. That's all I had. This meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everyone.